Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Clean Water Summit Partners webinar on the California State Water Resources Control Board's reissued statewide sanitary sewer systems waste discharge requirements order, or the reissued SSS WDR, which the State Water Board adopted in December of last year. My name is Jared Voskel, and I serve as Manager of Regulatory Affairs for CASA, the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. And along with BACWA, CIVICWA, Clean Water SoCal, and CWA, we comprise the Clean Water Summit Partners. Today's our second webinar on the reissued SSWDR, and it'll be focused on updates for enrollee spill emergency response plans, which will need to be implemented by the June 5th effective date for the order. Today, we're pleased to be joined again by State Water Board staff Walter Mobley, who's the lead right now for the board working on this and is able to go over the order and explain the types of new additions to updates in the spill emergency response plans. Followed by Walter, we have Michael Flores, who will also talk about these changes for collection systems. And then he'll be followed by Andy Morrison, who will talk about implementation for agencies. We have Debbie Mackey from CIVICWA and Mary Cousins from BACWA serving as moderators along with the panelists for numerous Q&A sessions. So as that items are being discussed by the various panelists, you'll have time to engage and inquire with them about specific items for your agency. So with that, we're very appreciative for you all joining us today. And we're also grateful to our presenters and our panelists for their time and sharing their insights and expertise on this topic. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jared, and good morning, everybody. My name's Mary Cousins. I'm the Regulatory Program Manager for the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, or BACWA. And our first presentation today is going to be from Walter Mobley, a water resource control engineer with the State Water Board, Division of Water Quality. Walter's academic background is in civil engineering at Howard University, and Walter has been implementing the Sanitary Sewer Systems General Order since 2018. She was very much involved in the development of the reissued order, and she will be your main point of contact for the order implementation and for any of your database questions. After Walter's presentation, we're going to go into a Q&A session. And Afrouz Farsimadan, also from the State Water Board, will be joining us for that portion of the webinar. And I'm going to introduce Afrouz now. So Afrouz holds a master's degree in civil engineering from Sacramento State University. She's a professional civil engineer with experience in the transportation and water quality sectors. And she's been with the State Water Board for the past 6 years. And she served as senior supervising engineer, overseeing the development and implementation of numerous statewide water quality permits. Afrouz is managing the implementation of this reissued order. Now, as Jared mentioned, we had a webinar back in January as well from the Clean Water Summit Partners. And some of the questions from that previous webinar have already been answered by State Water Board staff, including Walter and Afrouz and others there. And those are all compiled into an Excel spreadsheet. And I believe that the link to that should be posted in the chat at some point during this webinar, and it was also sent out as an announcement earlier this week. So as you ask questions, please use that as a reference document in case you have questions related to the order that are more general in nature and not specifically related to the spill emergency response plans. So Walter and Afrouz, I'm so glad you can be here today to kick off this webinar. And Walter, please take it away.
Thank you, Mary, for that wonderful introduction. And again, hello, everyone. My name is Walter, and on behalf of the State Water Resources Control Board, I would like to thank you for your continued efforts to protect our waters. Today, I will be presenting on the Spill Emergency Response Plan requirements in the reissued order. Next slide, please. So on December 6th of 2022, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted statewide sanitary sewer systems general order 2022-0103-GWQ. This order replaces the existing statewide order number 2006-003-DWQ, which will be rescinded at 11:59 p.m. on June 4th of this year. The effective date of this general order is at 12 a.m. on June 5th of this year and will supersede the existing 2006 order and the existing 2013 monitoring and reporting requirements. It is important to note that this is not a new order, and I want to ensure that everyone understands that this order continues the existing regulatory structure of the 2006 order. Next slide, please. The main body of this order consists of 6 sections, including an introduction section defining the purpose of the general order and key terms, a regulatory coverage and application requirements section, providing information for automatic continued regulatory coverage for existing enrollees and application requirements for new applicants, a findings section that distinguishes the board's basis for updating the order requirements, a prohibition section outlining what is prohibited by this general order. In the prohibition section, there are 3 prohibitions. The first being Prohibition 4.1. It is an added prohibition and reads as follows. Any discharge from a sanitary sewer system that has the potential to discharge to surface waters of the state is prohibited unless it is promptly cleaned up and reported as required in this general order. Prohibitions 4.2 and 4.3 are similar to the existing order and now expands the prohibition of sewage spills to include waters of the state, which includes waters of the United States, non-federal surface waters, and groundwater. Prohibition 4.2 states, any discharge from a sanitary sewer system discharged directly or indirectly through a drainage conveyance system or other route to water of the state is prohibited. And 4.3 states, any discharge from a sanitary sewer system that creates a nuisance or condition of pollution as defined in Water Code Section 13050M is prohibited. After the prohibition section is the Section 5, the specification section, that specifies the requirements placed on the enrollee. A provision section that explains current regulations and policies regarding water board enforcement and discretion and other administrative matters. And then attachments A through F. They are a part of the order and therefore are enforceable. Attachment A is definitions which define major terms used in the order. Attachment B is the application for enrollment, which provides official enrollment form for new applicants. Attachment C is the notice of termination, which provides the official notice of termination form for existing enrolled systems. Attachment D is the sanitary sewer system management plan required elements, which provides detailed information regarding all 11 required elements of a sewer system management plan. Attachment E1 provides detailed information on the notification, monitoring, reporting, and record keeping requirements. And E2 just summarizes that information that is involved in attachment E1. Lastly, attachment F is the Regional Water Quality Control Board's contact information for required notification. In this slide, specifically sections 5 from the main body of the order and attachments D1 and E1 provide the requirements for compliance with this order. And in this order, sewer system overflows are just a subset of spills in where sewage exiting the system could violate a prohibition. So therefore, throughout the order, the word spill is used instead of limiting references to sewage discharges as sanitary sewer flows are commonly termed SSOs. Next slide, please. To understand the spill emergency response plan requirements of this order, we first need to understand how this order defines a spill. You may find how a spill is defined for the purpose of this order in the introductory section and in attachment A, which states that a spill is a discharge of sewage from any portion of a sanitary sewer system due to a sanitary sewer system overflow, an operational failure, and or infrastructure failure. And sewage is associated wastewater spilled from a sanitary sewer system that may threaten either public health, beneficial uses of waters of the state, and the environment. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in the definition of a spill, I mentioned the term beneficial uses. So the term beneficial uses is a water code term and is defined as the uses of waters of the state that may be protected against water quality degradation. Examples of beneficial uses include but are not limited to municipal, domestic, agricultural, and industry supply, power generation, recreation, aesthetic enjoyment, navigation, and preservation and enhancement of fish, wildlife, and other aquatic resources. Section 3 of this order are the findings, and in those findings, section 3.2.2 further details a list of beneficial uses. Next slide, please. So this order emphasizes the protection of waters of the state. And waters of the state are surface waters or groundwater within boundaries of the state as defined in Water Code section 13050E, in which the state and regional water boards have authority to protect beneficial uses. This order addresses pathways that spills may enter surface waters and groundwater through. So examples of that may be groundwater aquifers, surface waters, saline waters, and natural washes and wetlands. Next slide, please. Groundwater is defined as water beneath the surface of the earth within the zone below the water table in which the soil is completely saturated with water, but does not include water that flows in known channels. I wanted to highlight how groundwater is defined in my presentation because I receive a lot of inquiries asking for clarification and the difference between reporting a Category 1 and 2 spill to the California Office of Emergency Services, also known as CalOES, which is mentioned in the table summaries in attachment E2 of this order. So waters of the state include groundwaters, whereas waters of the United States are surface waters or water bodies that are subject to federal jurisdiction. So the possible pathways for spills to enter groundwater is through engineered infrastructure, as shown in the two images on the left, or also spills to land over shallow groundwater table, as shown in the remaining two images on your right. Next slide, please. The notification, reporting, monitoring, and record keeping requirements are spill specific. So before I go into explaining these requirements, I would like to just explain the 4 categories. So Category 1 spill is defined as a spill of any volume of sewage that results in a discharge to a surface water, including a surface water body that contains no flow or volume of water, or a drainage conveyance system that discharges to a surface water if the sewage is not fully captured and cleaned up. So please note that any spill volume that is not recovered from a drainage conveyance system is considered a discharge to a surface water and therefore a Category 1 spill, unless the drainage conveyance system discharges to a dedicated stormwater infiltration basin. And a Category 2 spill is defined as a spill of 1,000 gallons or greater that does not discharge to a surface water. Next slide, please. The 2006 order defines a Category 3 spill as a spill less than 1,000 gallons that does not discharge to a surface water. To reduce reporting, the State Water Board added another category with less stringent reporting requirements. Therefore, in this order, a Category 3 spill is defined as a spill of equal to or greater than 50 gallons and less than 1,000 gallons that does not discharge into a surface water. And a Category 4 spill is defined as a spill less than 50 gallons that does not discharge into a surface water. Attachment E2 again summarizes the notification, monitoring, and reporting requirements, and that's what I'll be going over in the next upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So this first table, E2-1, shows the summary, notification, monitoring, and reporting requirements for Category 1 spills. For a Category 1 spill of 1,000 gallons or greater, an enrollee is required to notify the California Office of Emergency Services within 2 hours of becoming aware of the spill. Spill-specific monitoring is required per Section 2 of Attachment E1, and if a Category 1 spill of 50,000 gallons or greater happens, the enrollee is required to conduct water quality sampling of the receiving water within 18 hours of their initial knowledge of the spill. A draft spill report is also required and is due within 3 days of the enrollee's knowledge of the spill. A certified spill report is due within 15 days of the spill end date, and a technical report, which is only required for the 50,000 or gallons or greater spills, is due within 45 calendar days after the spill end date. An amended spill report must be submitted within 90 calendar days after the spill end date. Next slide, please. So table E2-2 shows the summary of the notification, monitoring, and reporting requirements for Category 2 spills. So for a Category 2 spill, discharging or threatening to discharge to a water of the state, an enrollee is required to notify the California Office of Emergency Services within 2 hours of becoming aware of the spill. Spill-specific monitoring requirements is noted in Section 2 of Attachment E1, and similar to Category 1 spills, a draft spill report is due within 3 business days of the enrollee's knowledge of a spill, and a certified report is due within 15. And again, the amended spill report is due within 90 days of the spill end date. Next slide, please. For Category 3 spills, as you can see on this table, there is no notification requirement. The spill-specific monitoring is mentioned in Section 2 of Attachment E1. A monthly certified report is due within 30 calendar days after the end date in which the spill occurred, and amended spill reports are due within 90 days after the certified spill report due date. Next slide, please. So for Category 4 spills, there are no notification requirements. And the monitoring, visual monitoring is required. To minimize cost, this order requires the monthly reporting of Category 4 spill volume, the total spill volume, and the total number of Category 4s that spills occurred. Additionally, by February 1st, after the end date of the calendar year in which the spills occurred, is an annual report, and an enrollee can upload and certify a report in CWICS. Next slide, please. This order has separated the notification, monitoring, and reporting and record-keeping requirements for spills from an enrollee-owned or operated lateral. But if the spill from a lateral discharges to a surface surface water, it is considered a Category 1 spill, and the notification, monitoring, and reporting requirements are per the Category 1 spill requirements. It is that scenario. An enrollee is required to still notify the California Office of Emergency Services within 2 hours, becoming aware of an enrollee owned or operated spill of 1,000 gallons or more. And by February 1st, like Category 4 is after the end date of the calendar year in which the spills occurred, there is that requirement to upload and certify a report. Next slide, please. So now I'll go over the spill emergency response plans. I hope that kind of sets the tone for understanding why and which these requirements are due by the effective date. Next slide, please. So section 5.12 of this order and section 6 of the attachments outline the requirements for the spill emergency response plan. In the specification section of 5.12, existing enrollees are required to update and implement their spill emergency response plans by June 5th of this year, again, which is the effective date of this order. Additionally, enrollees of this order are required to certify in their annual reports that their plans are up to date, and the first annual report will be due by April 1st of 2024. Next slide, please. So the spill emergency response plan is a standalone document, and we hear a lot about why update the spill emergency response plan. It's really where the rubber hits the road, per se. And for the 3 prohibitions that I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, it kind of addresses and highlights how an enrollee can move forward with preventing spills and giving that knowledge to their staff to continue those efforts. Implementing an updated spill response plan prevents a violation of all the prohibitions that I mentioned, and also can prevent third-party lawsuits from occurring. An updated requirement in the spill response plan is local utility coordination. And this coordination between local agencies can assist in securing immediate access to drainage conveyance systems to reduce spill impacts, as well as assisting with blocking and cleaning up a spill and preventing spills into water, surface waters, which will subsequently prevent the need for water quality monitoring. Also, knowing where storm drains discharge prevents erroneously reporting Category 1 spills, which can save you time and money, as well as be useful in supporting documentation to defend against third-party lawsuits. And knowing where the storm drain discharges also helps with determining whether the spill that occurs is a Category 1, because sewage discharges that discharges to groundwater are not a federal violation and are not Category 1 spills. So updating your spill emergency response plan by the effective date also prevents non-compliance with state regulated environmental laboratory accreditation program, or ELAP requirements. And these lab contracts should be secured as soon as possible. Lastly, it is important to note that this order does not require a separate monitoring plan, but for agencies that may have one, they can still maintain that separate plan if they choose. Next slide, please. So there are 14 required elements that the spill emergency response plan must address. I think it's important to mention that not only should the plans be updated by the effective date, but agencies should be reviewing their plans annually and assessing the effectiveness of their spill emergency response plan and updating the plan as needed. This slide here shows a summary of the requirements listed in attachment D, section 6 of this order. And the order requires that spill emergency response plans address prompt notification of primary responders, appropriate agencies, and affected entities, compliance with notification, monitoring, and reporting requirements of this order, training of staff and contractors on the implementation of the plan, spill containment and cleanup to prevent discharges to waters of the state and minimize public health impacts, pre-plan coordination with storm drain agencies and utility agencies, post-spill assessment of spill response activities, as well as documentation and reporting of spills, and finally, assessment of the effectiveness of their spill response plan. Next slide, please. In addition to why updating the spill emergency response plan is important and must be done by the effective date of this order, I wanted to mention that there is a need to train personnel and contractors. This slide captures the training needs for those personnel and contractors. Specifically, agencies should focus on the revised spill categories, capturing all communications, complaints, and supporting correspondences, notifying Cal OES, as well as monitoring, reporting, and record-keeping requirements for all the categories, field documentation and maximizing available tools, record-keeping for Category 4 and enrolling owned or operated spills, estimating spill volumes and capturing your assumptions and documenting your calculations, as well as spill response practice drills. Next slide, please. So the State Water Board staff will continue to directly be involved in statewide training with the California Water Environment Association to continue to develop and deliver cost-effective, interactive online trainings and order implementation workshops. We will also continue to be directly involved with industry associations to develop documents that are for guidance documents and conduct order implementation trainings and to present at conferences. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation for today. And so thank you for allowing me to present. And before I hand it back off to Mary for the Q&A segment of this webinar, I just want to highlight some important information. First, it is critical that any active legally responsible official or data submitter log into CWICS so that we have up-to-date information and can send that important compliance communications. In addition, the order can be found at our Sanitary Sewer Systems General Order website, which is mentioned in that first hyperlink. You have the ability to subscribe to our Sanitary Sewer Order email list for updated email notifications. It was in the past called the LIRIS list, but now we're moving forward with Gov Delivery. But right now the link is still available as is. And if any updates do occur, I will be sure to pass that on to everyone so that we have the proper list for subscribers. And lastly, for any assistance that's needed, you can either contact me personally on my email address, walter.mobley@waterboards.ca.gov, but really I'm manage the Sanitary Sewer Water Board email list as well. So sanitarysewer@waterboards.ca.gov is where you can contact me as well. So thank you for your time, and there you go, Mary.
Well, it's really up to you and Afruz to answer the questions. And we've got a few that have been posted in the Q&A. As a reminder, please go to the Q&A button in Zoom to type in your questions. There isn't a way to ask them live. You need to type them in. We already had one great question that has been answered with some text from Afruz, but I think it would be great to elaborate live on this question. And the question was, can beneficial uses be narrowed down to those that are most beneficial during a time of drought? And if so, how to do it? Afruz or Walter, could you comment a little bit more, just explain how do we know what beneficial uses are applicable to a specific receiving water?
Each regional water board has a basin plan, water quality control plan, and they go through an extensive process evaluating each water body and designating beneficial uses for that water body. And then they assign water quality objectives and policies on how to achieve those objectives. So designating a beneficial use is an extensive process. It's not something easy. It takes years to go through a change and go through the public process, and ultimately the regional water board or the state water board for statewide water quality control plans have to adopt the basin plan. So it's not something that can be changed, and we can notify people on a regular basis.
Also, Michael Flores mentioned in the chat that he does have a slide on how to find what beneficial uses are in your region. So coming up in further presentation, he'll be going over that.
Very good. Okay, so we've established they cannot be easily changed, and you're going to need to go to your regional board website to figure out which ones apply to your water body, and more is coming up on that coming up. The next question is, could you elaborate on the requirement to coordinate with other utility agencies in addition to stormwater agencies? What other utilities are you looking for coordination with?
Drinking water systems are an example of other utility agencies. You have to evaluate what agencies, what entities in your area may get impacted by sewage spills from your system and coordinate with them.
Okay, thanks, Afruz. A question about, does the training need to be completed prior to June 5th?
If this is the training related to the spill emergency response plan, yes. Training is part of the implementation of the plan, and the agencies needs to be ready to report spills per the revised spill category. So training is part of that too.
Very good, thank you. The next question is there a template that can be made available for agencies to develop their spill emergency response plans?
The State Water Board is not creating templates. Maybe industry associations with the assistance from our staff can develop templates, but we don't have any templates. Each spill emergency response plan is different for each agency and each system. It's hard to fit in a template.
Thanks, Afruz. I know some of the community, such as Bakwa, Civicwa, I'm not sure we're going to be providing templates specifically, but there certainly is an opportunity to share one another's spill emergency response plans. So definitely follow up with the Clean Water Summit Clean Water Summit partners on that one. And thank you for the question. The next question is from Paul Kazi. So this one's kind of technical. The question is, are owner-operated lateral overflows, not Category 1, required to be reported monthly, like the Category 4 spills? So this is like a detailed spill reporting question. Walter, Afruz, can you take that?
Yes. So you want to go through? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that That would be separate. So a category 4 spill and an owned and operated category spill can be reported separately because we want the owned and operated information. Essentially, any owned or operated spill is going to fall into one of the categories outside of a category 1. It's just that the reporting requirement for the category 1 spill is required within the category 1 spill requirements, whereas enrollees should follow the requirements listed in the attachment E1 for enrollee owned and operated spills.
Okay.
I think I may add that the monthly reporting, I think Paul is asking if they have to report the volume and number of spills similar to category 4 spills, which is no. The LRO should just go into civics on a monthly basis and check if they have a lateral spill.
It's like a
Or-
yes or no kind of a thing.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then they keep records of spills, and at the end of the year, by February 1st, submit that report.
Okay. So it's a yes or no on a monthly basis, and then the full report at the end of the year. Okay, great.
My apologies. I misinterpreted the question.
It's confusing. Okay. The next question is, can you clarify if an SSO or a spill that percolates through the ground into a groundwater table, is that a category 1 spill?
A category 1 spill is any volume of spill to a surface water. So in this case, it's not a category 1 spill, and depending on the volume, it could be category 2, 3, or 4.
Wonderful, thank you. Here's a great one. Does the spill emergency response plan need to be uploaded into CWIX?
No. There is a requirement within this order for enrollees to upload their existing sewer system management plan, but that does not require them to upload the updated spill emergency response plan. It followed the order language, and it says that it's just required to update and implement. And so that's how we've been going forward with training, is just to explain that all you need is to update the spill emergency response plan and implement it by the effective date.
Okay, so would you advise that agencies just go ahead and upload whatever they have right now, re-enroll in the reissued order, and then separately and maybe next update the spill emergency response plan to conform to the reissued order?
In whatever order, there's a window for doing the continuation of coverage. So that won't begin until next month. So I think it's best for enrollees to begin to look at their spill emergency response plans as soon as possible.
Of course. Great. All right, thanks. There was another question about an SSO that goes into a stormwater infiltration gallery that percolates into the ground, be considered spills to waters of the state. I think that's a yes, but could one of you confirm if it goes into, actually, I don't know. If it goes into a stormwater infiltration gallery and it goes into the ground, are we considering that a spill to waters of the state?
If it's, so I'm not sure, is it treated through bioswale, like it's percolating? As long as the spill reaches the groundwater, it's considered a spill and has to be reported.
So that's a yes. It's a spill to waters of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the next question has already been answered. There's a question that's kind of similar that I'll just ask now. In our district, we have lots of bioswales on private properties. Are these considered routes to groundwater?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great question now about Category 3 spills. In the FAQ document that we shared in the chat, number 95, there's a discussion about the Category 3 spill reporting requirements. And someone had noted previously that the Category 3 spill requirements are more detailed than, I think, Category 2. Are there going to be updates to the reporting requirements for Category 3 spills?
The requirements for all category reporting are in an adopted order. Nothing can be changed in an adopted order. This order has gone through extensive public process. We issued an informal draft, we issued a formal draft. Stakeholders had an opportunity to comment in front of the board during the board adoption meeting. Whatever requirement is in the order is enforceable, and CBEX will be designed to accommodate all the reporting as the order requires. And we understand some argue that it's more stringent requirement than Category 1. And we are going to try to work with CBEX to see if we can somehow give an option for enrollees to specify that this reporting does not apply. But as far as making changes, no.
Okay, thank you. So going back to the question of private lateral reporting, there's a question of just to confirm if a spill is on a private lateral and that private lateral belongs to someone who's not an enrollee, is the agency required to report the spill as soon as they're made aware of it? Is that something they need to do, or that's optional?
No, spills from private laterals that is not owned or maintained by the enrollee, they are not required to be reported, but the order encourages enrollees to voluntarily report them.
And in addition to that, the order also has reduced the reporting information for the voluntary reporting of private laterals. So there isn't that the enrollee requirement to include a lot of their own information in that reporting. There's only a few questions in association with that private lateral spill.
Okay, great. Next question is, when can we expect to see the updated reporting items in CWICS? I know you're redesigning CWICS to handle the new questions. Are we going to see like how, maybe not be able to log into CWICS, but will we see like screenshots or maybe the order the questions will be asked in? Do you know when that's going to be available?
We are
We
currently,
don't.
yeah.
But Walter, go ahead. Walter works with our DIT.
Yeah, I work with our DIT, and we are working to address modules in the order in which we need them, which first would be the continuation of regulatory coverage. We don't have a set date on when the expected reporting items will be in CWICS, but as soon as we do know that information, we will provide it. What I can say is it will be ready by June 5th, and our goal is to follow the structure of how the questions are outlined for each category spill currently in this order for the reporting requirements, but we don't have a definite answer when or how that will look.
Okay.
Today.
Thank you. I know everyone's eagerly awaiting that, so if you could pass on the message, the sooner the better, that'd be great. Question about whether man-made lakes are considered to be a surface water for the purposes of this permit? How do folks know if they're considered waters of the state or waters of the US for man-made lakes? I guess
Waters of the,
sorry.
this is more like if it's the water of the US or not, it's a legal discussion, but man-made lakes are considered waters of the state. We have NPDES permits for applying pesticides to like home association lakes.
Okay. And then another similar question about figuring out where the water's going. How can folks confirm if a spill to land has the potential to reach groundwater? I know all soils are different. Can you suggest a technical resource for figuring that out?
I don't have a technical resource in mind, but it's just, it depends on the groundwater level where the sewage spilled. It seems like they have to do some investigation.
Correct. And I think there are a good resource maybe to contact your regional board in situations of not being known, because they are more familiar with the lay of the land in that region and may have region-specific resources for that information.
Wonderful. That's a great idea. Next question is some questions about laterals. For an agency that doesn't own private laterals, who would be doing the reporting?
They don't own. The order does not regulate private laterals, so it is voluntary reporting.
So either the agency can do it voluntarily or no one needs to do the reporting. Okay, great. And a similar question, if sewer laterals are owned and maintained by the property owners and not the agency, and a spill occurs from the lateral or the property's clean out, would that be reported? I guess that depends
So
if it's the upper or lower lateral.
Like,
So maybe that's site specific. Is that correct? It kind of depends on who owns.
it depends on if you own or
Yeah.
have the responsibility for maintenance. If not, no, the agency does not have to report.
Okay. Thank you for answering the same question 3 times, but it can't hurt to be very
And
clear.
there is one thing that I need to clarify. If a spill from a lateral was caused by failure in the main system, then it is considered a category spill and has to be reported as the spill category.
Great. That's if it, yes. And I think someone will probably talk about this more later in the webinar, but if it backs up from the main line, there's different requirements. Next question is, if a spill ends up in the person wrote storm station or dedicated retention basin, is that considered a category 1 spill?
I'm not sure, is it like going through a stormwater infiltration basin?
I think not infiltration, but just retention basin. If it's just being held, not specifically being infiltrated.
No, it's not a category 1 spill because it's not going into a surface water.
Okay, so as long as it's held in a retention basin and doesn't go further than that. Next question is, will city workers who work on easements be protected when trying to work on overflows on easements? If not, how should the overflow be reported and who should it be reported? I think we'll have to, I'm not sure exactly what that one means.
Yeah.
So, is it a safety question, like protected safety-wise?
We'll have to revisit that one, maybe get some more information. The next question is, will the LRO be required to select the spill category, or will CWICS do this automatically, which is how it's currently set up? Do you
So
know
again,
that?
we're still working with understanding and determining how the modules will operate. But as soon as we have a definitive answer, then we will be reaching out to CWA, Summit partners, and also through subscribers of the Gov Delivery subscription with information. Right now, we can't necessarily go into that. It hasn't been fully determined to be the case.
Okay, we are eagerly awaiting the answer on that one. And then a similar question, are you planning to issue any kind of guidance document? Right now there's a CWICS user's guide for how you kind of navigate through CWICS and answer the questions. Are you planning to revisit that and update it, or post any other kind of guidance for folks to use CWICS?
Yeah, we've developed a data review group with our Summit partners, which Jared and Mary spoke to in the beginning, who all is included in that. That is the goal, is to develop these documents with them and have modules for guidance under this order. It won't necessarily look like how the current guidance document looks. We're planning to separate them based on the item or the topic at hand, but that's still in the development process.
Excellent. Sounds very useful.
I'm sorry, Walter, we should also mention the videos.
Oh, yes. Training
Oh,
video.
yeah.
My
Oh, great.
apologies. Yes, we are working with Michael Flores and Michelle Rodriguez on creating training videos that will be posted and available on specific topics regarding this order as well.
Thank you. That was the voice of Michael Flores coming in there, and he's our next speaker. Another question about classifying water bodies. During the rainy season, we're getting a lot of puddling. Are temporary ponds in low-lying areas are considered to be surface waters?
No,
No.
if the water stays in the pond and doesn't overflow into a surface water, it is not considered a surface water.
Okay, great. And then for category 3, there's a question about category 3 spills. Is it true that for category 3, we don't need to report individual spills, just totalize and submit a monthly certified spill report?
Category 3 reporting is a batch reporting, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't report for each individual spill. But the only thing is that you go into CWICS at the end of the month and report all individual spills, but you don't total them together.
That's for category 4 that you would do that.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a difference between category 3 and category 4. You're going to do individual details for category 3 and sum everything up for category 4. Here's a great question. If a private lateral has chronically had a lot of spills, what can be done to enforce the necessary maintenance on the owner?
In this order, we have included language that the regional boards or the state water board can decide if a private lateral needs to get enrolled under the order. So maybe if you see an issue that like continuous spilling from a private system, then you inform your regional boards and they will decide if they want to take enforcement or they force the system to get enrolled under the sanitary sewer order.
All right, that's great. And that's a key difference between this order and the previous one. So that is going to wrap up this part of the Q&A session. We are going to have more Q&A later in this webinar. following some of the other presentations, and then again at the end. Thank you so much, Walter and Afruz, for that rapid fire session. And I'm now going to turn it over to our next speaker.